Thank you very much. And when we held the first Oregon Business Summit in 2002, and Duncan Wise and Bill Thorndike and I thought success would be enough people to fill a couple of booths at Denny's, we never expected a room like this. It's very clear now that this is the place to be when you're talking about the business future of Oregon. Congratulations, Oregon Business Summit, every corner of Oregon represented today. From the beginning, our key principles were reconciliation and compromise and as much bipartisanship as we could get our hands on. It is still that way, and let me give you a short example. When I arrived at the Pendleton Roundup this past September after a bone-crunching 13-hour flight from D.C., a local rancher came up, shook my hand, and said, "You're doing a great job back there in D.C., Guy. Keep up the great work, Greg." Now, obviously, he thought I was Congressman Greg Wyden, who is doing a fine job, but not wanting to pass up the chance to ride on Greg's coattails to bipartisanship, I said, "Hey, thanks a lot. And I like working with Ron Wyden, too." You know, got to get that bipartisan deal going. And the rancher looked up, a little dour, and he said, "Yeah, I guess Wyden's okay. Do what you gotta do, Greg." So let me just also say that in the interest of bipartisanship, the whole state of Oregon and the Oregon Beavers, next year I will be wearing a black and orange tie. Your model of ending business as usual is very much in sync with what has to happen at the federal level as well. And I think that's what Oregonians had on their mind when they mailed their ballots in this fall. At the federal level, ending business as usual means three things: cutting the federal budget deficit and enacting policies that make it attractive to create good private sector jobs. Second, ending what has happened with government becoming enslaved to process and procrastination and breaking those chains that limit job growth. And third, Oregon needs to restore its traditional industries and find new ones that our state can build on. Nowhere is the federal culture of business as usual and procrastination more damaging than in forest policy. For almost 2 decades, whether there was a Republican or a Democrat in the White House, Oregon has lost good-paying jobs in the woods and mills, forest health has deteriorated, and treasured old growth has disappeared. I want to tell you, after years of conferences, task forces, plans, and reviews of the plans, it is time to say no more. Without dramatic change in federal forest policy, we could lose the few remaining mills on the east side of the Cascades. If that happens, there's going to be nobody left to mill the logs and ensure the promise of biomass. Without those mills, dead and dying material is going to keep building up on the forest floor. There'll be more catastrophic fires. Oregon, we cannot let this be our forestry future. There are alternatives. On the east side, responsible members of the timber industry and the environmental community have worked with me on a plan to create both jobs and healthier forests. This is going to let us get saw logs to the mills, thin out millions of acres of overstocked second growth of forests. This first-of-its-kind strategy can revive the forest product sector in eastern Oregon. I'm committed to getting it done and then moving exactly this kind of collaboration to the west side of Oregon. Second, biomass can be a major source of new, good-paying Oregon jobs and clean energy. but only if it is not killed in the crib with dumb regulation. The Obama administration wants to regulate biomass as if it was just one more fossil fuel-based industry spewing carbons in the air. Folks, this is bad science, it's bad energy policy, it's bad for job creation, and as the chairman of the Forestry Committee, I will not let that happen. Third, the forest policy of the future must explicitly recognize the federal government's historic obligations to rural communities. I wrote the first and second county timber payments laws that have brought more than $2.5 billion to resource-dependent communities for schools and roads and basic services. With the support of my colleagues in the Congress, I intend to write the third county timber payment law. It is part of the agreement that was entered into with rural states 100 years ago when the federal forest system was created and the federal government ended up owning more than half of our land. I have no higher priority than making sure Oregon's rural communities are never sacrificed on the altar of misguided, myopic thinking inside the D.C. Beltway. Now, when it comes to federal business as usual and procrastination, I'm obviously working in a target-rich environment. But in the interest of time, let me just make a couple of quick comments about health care. After passing a federal health care bill to greatly expand coverage, the federal government must get moving to combat the #1 health concern in this room. That is containing health care costs. At the federal level, at a minimum, the government must move to let states like ours get away from the one-size-fits-all federal policy. Senator Scott Brown, the Republican senator of Massachusetts, and I have introduced a bill to do just that. It will give the people in this room, business leaders and healthcare providers and others, the tools to let us carve our own future. With that proposal, we can get to the bottom line, and that is health care costs that no longer go up far in excess of inflation. The federal tax code, and you all know that we're having a little bit of a discussion in Washington, D.C. about taxes, is a monument to procrastination and business as usual. You know, that's the tax law that was last overhauled a quarter century ago and thousands of tax changes. The one that we put in place back when China and India weren't even a blip in the global economy. Now those countries have become tough international competitors. We need a federal tax policy that is not just going to be a few tax breaks here, some temporary changes there, and a liberal sprinkling of goodies that keep the special interests in Washington, D.C. happy. There must be permanent reform of this job-killing, insanely complicated tax code, and I'm committed to working with you to get that done. I've authored a bipartisan bill here with Senator Judd Gregg. The leaders of the Federal Deficit Commission like it. The Heritage Foundation, which I would admit I don't quote every single day, says it'll create 2.3 million new jobs per year. I've asked the president to put it on the table at his State of the Union address next month, and I'm confident he'll do it. And let me close with a quick comment about trade policy. 1 out of 6 jobs in Oregon is directly tied to trade through the movement of cargo and other activities at Oregon ports. We have to find new ways to grow things, make things, add value to them, and then ship them somewhere. That will be my focus as chairman of the Trade Subcommittee in the United States Senate. And there are job-creating opportunities for our trade community that will come up next year. For example, next year, Oregon will see and have the opportunity to influence a new farm bill. I'm going to do everything I can to make it the most export-friendly ag bill in history. For example, right now there's worldwide competition for branding wines in China and throughout Asia. I am determined for Oregon to beat Australia, Chile, and New Zealand and get our ag brands established in Asia first. The Farm Bill creates these and other opportunities. We will be working with you on it. This summit is also going to look at green energy. I don't want to miss the opportunity to design and manufacture for export more solar panels, wind turbines, and other fruits of the green energy space. Again, we're being challenged by the Chinese. The Chinese are increasing their market share of green goods by utilizing an increasing number of questionable practices that hurt Oregon companies. More than 40 United States senators agree with this. I predict that this is going to come before the World Trade Organization shortly, and you're going to see a more level playing field for Oregon's green energy exporters in world markets. Finally, there are great opportunities for Oregon in the area of digital trade. The internet is the shipping lane of the 21st century. Goods and services delivered through the net, whether they're software used to run business networks or cloud computing services, have huge potential for Oregon. American technology now dominates the space. As foreign firms try to catch up, Oregon companies are telling me that foreign governments are using piracy and censorship to create a high-tech blockade to keep our digital goods and services out. So my message as chairman of the Trade Subcommittee will be, China, tear down that firewall. Let in our trade. Let me close by saying that as we talk about changing business as usual, let's also remember that there are some bright spots in the Oregon economy. The world's biggest windmill farm coming in Shepherd's Flat. Facebook opening a huge data center in Prineville. Google in the Dalles. The Port of Coos Bay reopening the railroad on the south coast. Federal maritime researchers coming to Newport. And Intel picking Oregon rather than any of a group of heavyweights for that wonderful fab coming in Washington County. And the economic development business is changing. For example, Greenlight Greater Portland is bringing together folks on both sides of the river. So we work together rather than, once again, quarrel. What I can tell you is, as we change business as usual in Oregon, at the state level and at the federal level, let us not change what has brought the successes that I just ticked off. Those successes came about because of our quality of life, our unparalleled work ethic, and the fact that we are interested in making it possible for the industries of the future to have a more collaborative arrangement. I'm going to be with Senator Merkley back on a flight to Washington, D.C. in a little bit, but I know you're going to give us a solid game plan for changing business as usual. These summits have never let us down in the past. Your promise today is that you will not accept business as usual from state government. My promise to you is I will not accept business as usual from the federal government as well. Thank you very much.